Wake up everybody, no more sleeping in bed. No more backward thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There's so much hatred, war and poverty.
Hello, brothers and sisters. My name is Richard Koritz, and I'm proud to be the co-host of You Gotta Laugh to Keep From Crying with my old friend, brother, comrade, fellow trade unionist, Brother O.W. Sweeney.
Brother, glad to be here again with you.
Same here. Always.
Yeah, yes sir.
And today we want to discuss.
No, today we want to get in North Carolina Triad Jobs with Justice, where you can reach us at 336-272-2758. They're just due. Now you can go ahead and bring up the subject we want to talk about.
Yeah. So today, one of the reasons that we usually dress up for this occasion, but I wanted to make sure that I was particularly dressed because of the salute to the Juneteenth holiday, the new federal holiday that's just been in existence barely a year, and it was just celebrated. And one of the
second time.
Yeah, but the first time it was almost
It was
too early.
Yeah, yes.
For how when it was announced.
There was no preparation made.
Right. And one thing that you and I can take some pride in, as two old postal unionists, is the fact that the 700,000 or so postal workers, most of them had the opportunity this year to celebrate a paid holiday.
Right.
And other people in other occupations have also had that opportunity. And for many decades, the Texas public workers have had a paid holiday because that's where the holiday began. But I think it's really encouraging for us, and I think you and I in particular, that the fact that this is now a paid holiday, let's say for postal workers, union postal workers, is an opportunity for the postal union leaders and postal union activists to build greater respect among postal workers, to actually build greater unity among postal workers, because it provides an opportunity for black as well as white, Native American as well as Asian, really a rainbow that makes up
the United States of America.
Yes, and the postal workforce.
Right.
That now that it's a holiday, we can certainly hope that people will pay attention to the seriousness of what this celebration and what this holiday as a whole represents for all of us. And that's my hope.
Yeah, well, I just want to kick in a little piece right here. Okay. I look at Juneteenth should be celebrated with the same emphasis as July 4th. I think people should put that much emphasis on it. Because if you're going to celebrate your independence from the king and queen of England, why can't you celebrate the independence of people being released from bondage?
I'm with you all the way, and not only am I with you all the way, you'll be even more impressed that Opal Lee, the 92-year-old heroine,
mother, as she's called, the mother of Juneteenth. I say Juneteenth.
That she's already made a recommendation that the period from Juneteenth, which was June 19th, as you know, until July 4th should be a celebration of freedom and independence, and all through that entire period every year.
Well, it could be done.
And it fits in with your point about the importance of Juneteenth.
I understand it, but also The reason it should be done that is because by doing so, you're gonna help strike down some of the racist comment, because you still have people who feel that certain part of the United States population should be in bondage. It should be treated so, as second-class citizens, even though you pay the same tax rate and everything everybody else, but you're not really, some of them feel you're not really, as they say, quote unquote, an American.
Well, I think that it's going to take something like people becoming committed to the fight for freedom on a large enough scale that the white supremacists will be pushed back by a more powerful force, those that are fighting for freedom for all.
And one way we're gonna have to start doing it, we're gonna have to start knocking down them losers, or what they call their heritage, those traitors to the United States of America.
Yeah, like Robert E.
You have to burn that cloth,
Yeah.
that they want to be symbolized their heritage, because as far as I'm concerned, that cloth is a symbol of traitor, of being a traitor to the United States of America. I can't see it any other way, and I can't see how you can glorify it any other way. But yet, too many people accept it. And we're going to have to start putting that cloth down as what it is, a traitor's symbol.
Well, and we saw it on January 6th of 2021, as the halls of the Capitol building were invaded by people carrying those symbols once again.
Well, I'm a little bit disturbed by the word invaded, when I would like to use the word attack.
That's right.
Because it shows more what was happening rather than an invasion. When you attack something, you're being more vicious. Anyway.
I'm not going to get into a discussion with you right now about the words. I think both words are fine for dealing with it.
But attack is better.
I'm not going there. But I do want to raise with you, though, because I think you're right about the intransigence of the white supremacists in the United States, and the fact that really white supremacy, it is today as it was yesterday, and was for many, for several centuries of the existence of this country.
Amen.
At the very core of reaction. It was at the very core of what produced the cash crops and for the slave owners, and that their heaven on earth that they had at the expense of the slaves, and for that matter, free blacks and poor whites at the same time. So I think that's...
Which that hasn't changed now.
No,
it's just that too many of one segment trying to think they, because of their skin color, they got it better than the other. And it's so far from the truth.
Right. And that's really the central reason why the South has been really an oppressed colony, including the Southern whites.
Right.
Has been an oppressed colony of the North for the last 150 years or so.
Or more.
Yeah. So the question of Juneteenth that I want to get to. There's a lot of lessons in Juneteenth, and I think it's a great holiday. It's a great holiday because, number one, it was created by the emancipated slaves in Texas themselves.
Right.
They created that holiday, and they created it not because they were happy on the plantation, as I was taught in school. The little bit that they taught about slavery at all, even in Massachusetts, the cradle of abolitionism, that way back when, they had that same lie, that big lie, that about the slaves being happy on the plantation. And Juneteenth, as a holiday, created by the emancipated slaves and their jubilation at being free, gives that lie to that. And in doing so, it affirms the humanity of the Afro-American people, the essential humanity of the Afro-American people. Well, well, go ahead, because I want to get on to another part of it.
I'm gonna say that some of the slaves did not want to be free because they had certain uncertainties of what they was gonna do with their life. Because they was giving something with no direction, but yet with that no direction, they had no money.
Well, there were problems after,
Yeah, there was
right
problems.
after the Civil War because of that, no question.
Yes.
However, even the great black abolitionist, Frederick Douglass, in his first book, having been an escaped slave from Maryland himself, he was advised to leave the country for at least several years after that book was published, because the other abolitionists were afraid he was going to be murdered because of what he wrote in that book. But one of the things that he wrote in his book, on his experience as a slave, and based on his experience, was he did not like the idea of the slaves having holidays. It seems kind of surprising, but it fits in with what you just said, O.W., and that is that at the end of the year, for a week or whatever, the slave owners, evidently, and this is based on my reading of his book, of Frederick Douglass's book, would ply the slaves with liquor and all, and were really trying to teach the slaves.
Brainwash.
Brainwash, that's right, to brainwash the slaves. That is a better word, and I accept that word wholeheartedly.
Thank you.
Yeah, trying to brainwash the slaves into thinking that they were not capable of exercising freedom. And this is why Douglass himself said that he would have rather there were no, having been a slave himself, he would rather that there was no holidays like that because of the brainwashing that went on. So that's an interesting point, but I do want to get to the question.
But the amazing part is
Yeah.
that it still worked. Blacks as a whole celebrate those holidays, and they still, myself included, I'm not going to go out there and drink that ignorant water. But we have to understand that we have to celebrate what was done for us as well. I'm not saying don't celebrate Thanksgiving. I'm not saying don't celebrate Christmas. I'm not saying don't celebrate New Year. But come Juneteenth, let the world know that this is yours.
Right.
And
And it
show
wasn't
them
only
pride.
done for
That's right.
Afro-American people, but it was done by Afro-American people.
That's
because by far the most heroic soldiers in the Union Army, as a group, were the Afro-American soldiers.
But they don't teach that in the history book.
Well, but we're sharing it right now.
They don't teach that in the history book. Even though you had some fighting for the South, some slaves, because
Overwhelmingly, and most heroically, it was Afro-Americans, both freedmen and slaves who would run away to freedom, including Paul Robeson's father, who, I gotta mention Robeson.
Yeah.
And his father from North Carolina, and I think he joined up the Union Army around Newburgh, if I'm not mistaken. But he also, and they, in their tens of thousands, fought most heroically. And there were a lot of heroic white soldiers in the Union Army that fought for the freedom of the African-American people and others. But as a group, the heroism of the Afro-American Union Army soldiers was a decisive
That's right.
force in the freedom of the Afro-American people that was won. But I wanted to point out one of the things about, I had occasion to look at the News and Record and saw a blatant factual error in an article by the staff describing what the upcoming Juneteenth activities were going to be this past week. And in that article was the blatantly false statement that it was 2 years after the end of the Civil War that Juneteenth took place.
Yeah.
And so I tried to point out in a brief article that was published by the News and Record, And they also printed a correction. At least I was in part responsible for the correction, and they published the article on the same day.
Well, some of those people were brainwashed too.
Yeah.
They was told things that.
Right, but the confusion of it
Right.
was around the fact, I think it was around the fact that the Emancipation Proclamation was issued by Lincoln on September 22nd, 1862, to go into effect on January 1st, 1863, but only in the areas of the country, and it lays out in the Emancipation Proclamation itself, specific counties and parishes, like in Louisiana, and counties, I said counties, I guess, counties, parishes, and regions, that in states that were still under arms against the Union. So, which meant that when January 1st, 1863 came, no slaves were freed on that day, because by definition, they were not any slaves in places that were not where the Confederacy was up in arms. The people weren't freed, were not freed. So now the Civil War basically comes to an end at Appomattox Courthouse when the defeated general, the traitor Robert E. Lee, you've heard of him, right?
Some people glorify that traitor.
Absolutely, and there's still holidays in this country that shamefully that are in his honor. Hopefully that won't be much longer ago, that we can hope. And he surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant, who, after Lincoln was assassinated, and Andrew Johnson, who was a border state, Tennessee, really traitor to the Union, after he took over and tried to sabotage the freedom of the slaves and put the slave owners back in immediately, Congress, led by abolitionists, fought against it. And Ulysses Grant, the same man to whom Lee surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse as the head of the Union Army, the Liberation Army, became president. And I didn't even know, and I say I because I've studied this issue my whole life, for one reason or another, that Ulysses Grant was the only president who actively did a number of policies, implemented them to protect the Afro-American people. But that didn't come out until 2020 or so. I mean, it was just within the last couple of years. And under Grant, and under that, those abolitionists, influential people like Congressman Thaddeus Stevens and Senator Charles Sumner, Reconstruction was put in. So there was a period of rise. In South Carolina, the people ended up, and this was freed slaves, already freed black freedmen who were, many of them very
strong in Charleston, South Carolina.
Yes, and very knowledgeable, and poor whites were in alliance there, and they had the most advanced constitution in the state of South Carolina. That the United States, the most democratic constitution that I believe that the United States has had even up to the present day, and it involved the rights of women, it involved school children going to public schools, and all of that. So, which gave us a glimpse of what, as you said, you and I talked about before this show, what could have been had Reconstruction been allowed to survive. Or been able to survive, right? So, but the fact is that in going back to Juneteenth, even though it was only 2 months and not 2 years after the end of the Civil War, the reason that it was suppressed after the signing of the surrender by Lee, let's put Lee and surrender in the same sentence as many times as we can. He surrendered the Confederacy, the Confederate Army, to Grant. The reason it took 2 months is because Texas was just about sealed off from the rest of the country. It was like the westernmost point.
Yeah.
And the Union Army had not penetrated very much at all
That far.
into Texas. with the result that slave owners in Missouri, Louisiana, and Arkansas brought their slaves into Texas so that the Union Army would not liberate them.
Yeah.
And their property would not be taken from them.
Yeah.
You know. So, but it shows you, number one, the liberating character of the Union Army. Number two, it emphasizes the oppressive, slave-owning class of people. And so they put 200,000 slaves from those states, nearby states, into Texas. There were already 200, and according to the 1860 census, there were already about 200,000 slaves in Texas and 355 free black people in Texas. Because guess what? This is not going to be too hard. The cash crop in Texas was
Cotton.
exactly. And the people that were picking over 90% of that cotton were Afro-American slaves.
Right.
So, I mean, so here you had this, and then on top of it, this is something that you'll get a kick out of, I think. Mexico, you know, we talk about how great the United States is, was, always will be, and all that. The Mexican government would not sign an agreement with the U.S. government to turn over slaves that escaped to Mexico, because the Mexican government, unlike the U.S. government, was opposed to slavery.
Yeah.
And so the result was that there was this tremendous concentration of surveillance, of, you know, not only oppression, which we know, but the repression of the slaves in Texas. And then, with the beginnings of the Civil War in 1861, having the slaves from Missouri and Louisiana and Arkansas transported there. And so it's not surprising that the word really didn't get out in Texas.
But you know what's really surprising?
Yeah.
Is that the fact that this is true history that you're talking, and I have to go back there. I have to go back to see a thing about this here lady being appointed as Supreme Court Justice, and
You mean Jackson, Justice Jackson?
and this guy from Texas is going to ask her about critical race theory.
Oh, yeah. You talking about Cruz?
Ted Cruz, to be
Yes,
exact.
yeah, okay.
And showing that people have to understand that he claimed he's not a racist.
Mm-hmm.
And water's not wet, as far as I'm concerned, with him not being a racist.
Right.
Well,
Yeah, I got it.
but yet his action is that of a what? A racist.
Is that anything like how you identify a duck?
It's a duck.
Yeah.
It'll walk like a duck,
Yeah.
quack like a duck. It's a what?
Yeah.
It's a duck. So,
And with a duck like Cruz, we better duck.
yes,
You know,
yes,
that's
yes,
the other
yes.
part.
And but yet the people of Texas continue to send him back. That goes to show you how deeply embedded racism is in this country. Well, they're not trying to get rid of it, they're trying to uphold it. Like that fool walking around after attacking the Capitol with that Confederate cloth, waving it around. My personal thoughts about it,
Yeah.
he should have been shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yet, when blacks goes out there to tell the truth about what's happened in history, or anybody wants to tell what happened in history, they want to come up with a smoke screen. And that's what critical race theory is a smoke screen.
You know, just to touch on that, I think, number one, that Juneteenth as a national holiday
It's a hot national holiday.
gives a lie
Right.
to critical race theory. Because where has it been all these years?
That's right.
Yeah, you know,
Well, critical race theory goes back to the 1930s.
well, but
What people
But
put that
Juneteenth is a holiday in Texas, goes back to 1865.
Right. That's right.
So yeah, but anyway, the critical race theory thing, the other thing about it that I want to mention, since I'm glad you brought it up, is what just happened in Buffalo, New York, within the last month or so,
Yes.
where this 18-year-old white supremacist youth from somewhere in upstate New York plans a trip. First he scouts out Buffalo, and then he plans a trip loaded with tremendous firepower.
They said he made 3 trips up there to scout the place out.
And what he was scouting out was getting a place where there was the biggest concentration of Afro-American people.
Black people.
So he was going to try to kill as many
As he possibly can.
as he could. And so now, let's bring Senator Ted Cruz into this mix. How would Senator Cruz want us to describe, without some kind of race theory, without some kind of recognition of the existence and of the poison of white supremacy in the United States, how would we describe what just happened in Buffalo, New York, without something like that? That tragedy is a total repudiation of what scum Senator Ted Cruz is. Yeah. That's what I think I said it is. Yeah.
I just want to emphasize that.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
It's getting kind of close, so we're gonna have to close. So,
Well, I was really with this one.
yeah. Well, we just want the people to say, think for yourself, read your history, read the history of the United States of America,
And celebrate
and you have to
Juneteenth.
and celebrate Juneteenth.
Juneteenth.
You might have to dig deep to get that information,
Right.
but it's worth having that.
And can I just brag about one thing?
Yes, sir.
I had the pleasure of publishing a book about Juneteenth here in Greensboro, and back 20 years ago. This is not a sales pitch, but in the course of my publishing and editing that book, I had the pleasure of getting to know Opal Lee, the mother of Juneteenth, who was there with Biden when the law was signed. So give me my props, brother.
In our unity lies our
Lies
strength.
What does the government care? They're doing a dirty deed. Old man sleeping on the cold street. They took his dream, he's gone to seed. What do you say? What do you say? What do you say? People of the world, come on, let's come together. Working people of the world unite, let's come together. We got nothing to lose but our chains. Nothing to lose but our chains.